Unlock this exclusive 20% discount on all Earthlight products, from portable tables and chairs to professional sheets and oils. Visit earthlight.com, create an account, and enter your ABMP member ID during registration. Plus, enjoy free ground shipping on orders over $75 and a flat rate of $395 for stationary or electric lift tables. Significant savings on everything you need to enhance your practice. Shipping rates and discounts subject to change. We're proud to assist you as the world's #1 brand in massage. Visit earthlight.com. Massage therapists, are you ready to take your career to the next level? The Master of Acupuncture Studies program at the One Institute of Graduate Studies can open doors to a rewarding and in-demand profession. Integrate acupuncture into your practice or establish a new career path. Our comprehensive program provides the knowledge and skills you need to thrive. Discover your potential at oneinstitute.edu. Final deadline for fall 2025 is coming up on July 1st. Enroll today.
I'm Darren Buford.
And I'm Kristin Coverley.
And welcome to the ABMP Podcast, a podcast where we speak with the massage and bodywork profession. Our guest today is Allison Denney. Allison is a certified massage therapist and certified YouTuber. You can find her massage tutorials at youtube.com/rebelmassage. She is also passionate about creating products that are kind, simple, and productive for therapists to use in their practices. Her products, along with access to her blog and CE opportunities, can be found at rebelmassage.com.
Hey, Darren, I'm going to jump in there. Amazing bio, because of course, Allison Denney is amazing. But did you also know that she was a featured instructor at the recent ABMP CE Summit, our free online event that we host for the profession?
I did.
She was fantastic, of course, and everyone loved her course. And exciting news, those courses, in addition to 750 additional hours of CE, are now available in the ABMP Education Center, free for ABMP members, along with 750 additional hours of incredible CE, all free for members, and available for non-members to purchase at a discounted rate for only $49 for 4.5 hours of CE until June 30th, 2025. Learn more at abmp.com/learn. Hello, Allison. Hello, Darren.
Hi, guys.
Allison, let's jump right in. You actually brought this topic to us as something that you were excited to talk about. And now, of course, Darren and I are excited to talk about it with you. But you've been concerned by how fast content creation has taken over. As a content generator yourself, what do you think has shifted most dramatically in recent years with both how people consume information, but also how much they trust information online?
I mean, I have so many thoughts, and that is such a big question. But I think the reason why I brought this topic to you guys and want to talk about it is because it is something that I grapple with in my own head on a daily basis. So as a content creator, I'm constantly thinking, okay, so what can I create that would be productive and helpful, and what's going to be the thing that's going to, hopefully therapists can take and use and utilize and learn from. And then I hop online to start either producing or check out some other people. And then number one, I get stuck in the death scroll, the doom scroll, whatever it's called. And then number two, I start getting a lot of feeds that are like, do you want your content to explode? Do you want to get 1 million followers? This is how to do it. And this is how to edit. And this is how to get all the clickbaits and all the things. And it just is this, massive wheel of churning, not necessarily content that is maybe valuable per se. And it becomes this overwhelming, I don't know, it's this force that just exists in all of our lives all the time. And so I started to think, well, what is it that we're really looking at, and what can we really trust? And how do we discern as therapists what we're really getting from this? And how do I discern as a content creator how to create content that really is something that I want to put out there, as opposed to just trying to get clicks.
Yeah, that's really nuanced. There's so many levels to that. I'm going to jump in just with some data. When I knew we were talking about this, I got my little nerd glasses on and went online and did some data check, and making sure that I was taking them, of course, per our conversation today, from credited sources. So we have the first thing that I thought was really fascinating. According to a study by the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, UNESCO, they found that 62% of social media creators don't verify the accuracy of content before sharing it with their followers. And roughly a third of influencers said they shared information from other sources without checking its validity if it originated from a source that they trusted. And quote unquote trusted typically meant, oh, that person has a lot of followers. They must be great. They must be legit. I mean, isn't that shocking? That's shocking to me.
Exactly. I mean, I would think that the numbers would be higher in terms of content creators not checking to verify what they're putting out there. I'm shocked. What did you say? It was
62%.
Yeah, I feel like it would be higher, but I also know that, you can buy clicks and you can buy all the bots that will make your algorithm push your posts into somebody else's feed. And then, what you're really putting out there, maybe it's verified according to some scientific research, but maybe it's, you're just kind of feeding a narrative that, I mean, this is a whole different conversation, but putting out content that is about wellness is complicated, and verifying stuff about wellness has lots of different levels that can be verified, and who is right and who is wrong is a whole nother conversation. And so once we find something we believe in, it's really easy to be like, well, this one guy who's got 5 million followers said this, and that means a lot, and it resonates with me. So therefore, I'm going to post about it. And whether or not it's true is a whole different conversation. And so the way that social media feeds our careers, our hands-on practice, our knowledge about anatomy and physiology and kinesiology is more where we get our information, way more so than schools and books. And that's the thing that I feel like feels so scary to me as an educator, as an online creator, and as a massage therapist.
This topic comes up a lot in our sister association for ASCP, primarily because skincare is so popular with consumers and they think they can kind of cut corners, right? So I don't want to take our conversation away from massage. We'll circle back around, but it is a common thing, and they're constantly fighting YouTubers, right? Which is, here's the hack for da-da-da-da-da. So in that magazine that accompanies that association, in Skin Deep magazine, there's actually a column in the back of the publication calling like whether things are true or not. And it takes like a popular trend and then kind of breaks that down. But let's circle back around to here in our discussion with massage and ABMP. Allison, when it comes to social media, how do you think like the average person starts to develop that filter or that sense of discernment, especially when people are getting better and better with flashy editing and bold claims?
I mean, first of all, I think that's a really good point, Darren. I think all the stuff that happens within skincare is about sales, and then about looks, which isn't necessarily about skin health, and then that, that just is a slippery slope. But I think that when you're receiving all this information, I think there's a couple different levels that I would like to address. I think, first of all, my generation, which is an older generation, has a harder time with it because we have a base of kind of trust that feels like, when we trust somebody who's talking about something, that we have this kind of innate, like, we want to trust that, we want to believe that, we want to learn. Not that I'm saying a younger generation doesn't, but I do think that the younger generation has grown up with this and has a way better kind of innate ability to look at this stuff and be like, oh, that's AI and that's fake news and that's, not something that is real or applicable, or that's been repeated 29 times already on TikTok or whatever it is. And so I think there's this language that is spoken around and in social media that has to do with sales and clicks and views and likes and subscribes that feels like to an older generation feels like it's important and feels like it carries a lot of weight. And to the younger generation, I think there's this already like almost muted part of them that understands that that's just how the algorithm works, and they maybe can discern things a little bit better. I don't know that I'm right or wrong, but I feel like my specific instance is that I watch my kids, and they, as they scroll and as they look through, I'm like, did you see this? Like, I'm holding my phone and they're holding their phones and I'm scrolling and I'm like, I come across something and I'm like, did you see this? Did you know that this thing can cause cancer and that this thing you can't eat for dinner anymore? And they freak out and they're like, Mom, seriously, like, that's so fake. It's so not even real. And like, why do you even click that stuff? And so, my perspective, my filter, my lens that I'm seeing all this through is of an older generation that is still learning this language. And I think that a lot of us can relate to that. A lot of us get caught up in what that feels like to kind of think, okay, so I'm doing this technique wrong, or I understood this muscle wrong, or, all the things that we can start to have fear around, because that's what this does. It creates a lot of fear.
Absolutely. And also, can we just take a pause to let the level of frustration that this is our current life situation just seep in for a second? Like, it's so frustrating that we have to constantly be doubting everything that we see or read or are presented with. And do we trust it or not? Like, that's a high level of energy output at all times to be sort of regulating the trust factor of everything we see.
100%.
I can speak to this as a journalist because we are trained to do the opposite. But that is not the normal public. Our task is to make sure to validate every single thing. So if you write for a publication for us or anything under the ABMP umbrella, a lot of times we're working with presenters and we're working with authors. And when we're reading submitted text, one of the things we do when we go back to authors to show them the work was, when we see a claim that we see, there's kind of talking generally, and the second you start to make somewhat of a claim, our radar immediately goes up. And then we put a little comment in our Word documents that we're sharing back and forth, and we go, please cite information for this. So we're thinking like that. It's almost like journalism teaches you to be skeptic right from the get-go. But when I go home and I'm not wearing that hat, I'm just like everybody else. And you want most of that stuff to be true, right? That's why you're clicking. And then you just have to kind of remember there's a marketer on the other side of that who's making that, who knows what it takes to make you click those things. So you have to have like a healthy amount of skepticism. You can't be completely naive going into things because who knows what you're going to start clicking on. But I did think about my dad, who doesn't really know social media, and he's not of a generation where he's using a smartphone like that. But I think he would be super susceptible to that, because I think he would think that the platform is completely real because it exists, right? It's one of the things that we think about it is at ABMP, whether it's a magazine or CE, and you're like, we have to hold our standard like way up here, because people are going to say, oh, you're an association, then everything coming out of the association must be true, right? So we're kind of constantly fighting that battle too.
Yeah. And I think, to be living in a current climate that is, there are a lot of associations that are doing things that we never thought would be okay or admittable. And so, the whole trust level, like you were saying, Kristin, is thrown in our face. And we then develop this kind of like low level anxiety all the time, which I think has been a conversation we've talked about in the wellness community for years and years now, but it seems to be just hitting this level of like almost just wanting to check out and not deal with any of it because it's too overwhelming. But I also think, to your point, Darren, having had written articles for ABMP, and the first time you guys were like, do you have research behind what you're saying? And I was like, oh yeah, I do. And I better know my stuff. And it was a good reminder. But also, being a business owner, having a product that I sell, and we all sell a product. So massage therapists all sell a product. We all sell what we're doing, the work that we do. And, I, as an instructor, always want to be like, you guys got to sell yourselves. You're like, you should believe in yourself and sell yourself and, create a great business. But at the same time, being in this seat as a business owner and selling a product like I do, I am constantly thinking, how can I get my product in front of more people? And the way to do that is to post more, ads, post, ads. Like, as much as I can get my stuff out there and keep everybody, like keep my stuff in front of everybody. That's how to do it. Whether or not my product is genuinely good or not, P.S. and by the way, it is, but whether it's good or not really ends up becoming the non-issue, and whether or not some famous person is using it or whether or not you saw it 50 times this week and you finally decided to click. That's like what the truth is. Then the truth becomes the real aspect of this becomes, all of these aspects of what wellness is not. So it becomes this truth of algorithms and sales and pushing when the truth of wellness is, as you guys all know, so much broader and deeper than that.
Let's take a short break to hear a word from our sponsors. Anatomy Trains invites you to take your career to the next level with Anatomy Trains Structural Integration, ATSI. We're kicking off the next training this September in Maine under the guidance of Tom Myers and our expert team. Come map the pattern and shape the change in this transformational 3-part certification program. Visit anatomytrains.com for details. Let's get back to our conversation. Allison, I'm so curious because you do such a great job of being very consistent with the content you create. And at the beginning of the pod, you talked about, as a creator, you start to see content that comes your way about like, hey, how do you get a bigger audience? How do you engage? Like, this is really valuable for us to hear. What are they telling you should be doing, which then can help us as sort of users of these platforms. What do we look for that might be a red flag that someone's taking advantage or, not being super truthful?
Excellent question. I mean, first of all, my really quick answer to that is to stay away from trends. All trends. Trends tend to be very fun to follow, and it's exciting to get caught up in it. And I think we all feel like we're missing out if we're not in the trend. None of us want to miss out. And that feels like everybody else is on this train and I want to hop on this train. But I think anytime you see a trend, it should be an immediate red flag of like, okay, somebody's posting about, I don't know, whatever it is, blueberries, because blueberries are really popular right now and with food. And so now I'm going to like put blueberries on somebody's back because that feels really healthy all of a sudden. None of that. But I do think that when you're scrolling and you're looking and you're trying to parse through it all, when you see something that is very highly edited, I mean, I don't know. This is so hard for me to talk about because I want to edit things that make people excited because I want people to click on my content because I think I produce good content. So I'm trying to like walk this fine line of like how to get those clicks, but also I don't want to get those clicks. But again, looking at things that are really highly edited and have that clickbait, have that like, do you want to stop being in pain? This is how. Do you want to fix that neck? This is how. There's no quick fix. There just isn't. And I think we all kind of know that, but we still click on it because we want to see what they're talking about. We want to see that crazy massage that they used a watermelon and they threw it and then I don't even know. Who knows what's out there? But there's a lot of crazy things that make us want to click. And it doesn't really necessarily mean that it's good.
Yeah, maybe that old adage of if it looks too good to be true, it's probably too good to be true. You know what I mean? Like,
exactly.
It's actually true. Yeah. Curious, how do we then, so say we see something and we're like, well, we really hope that this is true. What do we look for from a creator if we go to their, page and start to look at who they are and what their credentials are? Like, how do we figure out what's a trusted source and what's not?
I mean, credentials is big for sure. That's a big one. And who they've been in the world, what they've done in in their career and for their, however you want to look at it, for their community, for their career, for their education, what people they've learned from, who they interact with, who they align with. I think those are all big things. And I also think that if you see a content creator post something that you're like, whoa, I never thought about that before, or that's a new way to look at it, or that's something I didn't know or didn't think was true. I think when you then start following other creators and you see some similar stuff, you can start to deduce what might be right. I think the hard part is to deduce what's a fad. If all the creators are all of a sudden talking about lymphatic drainage and then all of a sudden everybody's doing that, that's one thing. But I think if you follow somebody who's got some really well-educated stuff to say about lymphatic drainage or whatever it is, and you start to go out there and look at other creators, look at not just their posts, but their websites and their education, you can really start to do some critical thinking for yourself. So this guy is saying this one thing, this guy is saying, this woman is saying this other thing. These people are talking about all of these things. And there's like these 3 fundamentals that are following true for all of them. And that's there's some foundation there. And that's follows along with the anatomy that I know or the physiology that I know. And I think using a critical mind is essential.
Allison, let's shift a little bit to talk about pain relief content specifically. Do you have any examples of most misleading or bizarre claims that you've seen online?
I think a lot of it is really product stuff. I think that there are some things that work for some pain. And I think there are some things that work for some people in certain painful situations. But when those things become, this is the end all be all, this is the cure all, that's the stuff that I find ridiculous to some degree. I don't know what a better word for it, but that's the stuff that I feel like, I see people doing gua sha or scraping in areas that are vulnerable or, in a way that makes it sound like this is the answer to your fill in the blank. And then another person, a content consumer will see that and apply it. And they've got some kind of contraindication that is not going to work for that specific promotion or thing that's being produced or pushed. And then we start hurting ourselves or hurting our clients. This is not ridiculous, but I think the heat-ice conversation is a constant. And I think that is an interesting one to follow, because if you really follow it, you will see the trends of people who are like, oh, it is all about heat. It is all about heat. And I just learned that everybody in Sweden takes saunas every single day and they live longer. And that is what I'm going to do now. And then you see people who are like, I dive into cold ice plunges every single day and I can run 20 miles a day. And this is the answer. And I think that that's a great example because heat and ice both are incredible and are incredible for different reasons and serve different purposes and are applicable in different times. So no one blanket answer for everything, especially if it seems a little silly.
Allison, what advice do you have for practitioners out there who look at this from 2 different lenses? One, they want to create their own content and share that, and they want to be able to show people who they are and what they have to offer in a genuine way, but that also is successful in all the platforms. And then 2, what advice do we have for people who want to be able to share somebody else's post on their feed for their, for their followers? How do you create content that's genuine, but that actually is successful? And how do we vet content so that we can share it and feel confident and good about it?
I'll just say this. The way that I think about it when I create a post is I would like the camera to show what I would like to see if I was learning from an educator. So I create something that feels like this is where my hand placement is. This is how my body mechanics are. This is the muscle I'm focused on. And I try to focus in on what my followers might want to get from it. And I think that can be translated to a massage therapist posting to try to attract clients or to try to help clients to understand what they are actually doing in their practice. And I think that talking through or applying text to a post that explains what you do is something really helpful. And I think that if you do that more, I think people will start to understand that you do know what you're talking about and that you do have an education behind you. I do think that when it comes to sharing other people's posts, I think it's really easy to get swept up in this looks exciting and cool and look at what this person's doing. I do the same thing. I don't know that I have a way to suggest that we discern all of that other than sticking with the, try to stay away from the trends, try to stay away from the flashy stuff. And even when you're posting your own stuff, I do think that staying genuine in who you are is going to be the bottom line. Because even if there are different perspectives around what science is right, which research is showing the right thing here, because there are lots of conflicting pieces of research around anatomy and physiology. If you are staying genuine in who you are and what you know, I think that's going to attract a slow growth as opposed to that like fast hit growth, which doesn't last and doesn't serve anybody's purpose in a good way.
One of the things that we talk about sometimes is being careful to make sure you're not coming off. Let me say it this way. If you're going to say something pretty emphatically, right, that's fine. Certainly if you're an expert in it. Sometimes the better conversation is when you don't know. And you actually say that. And you say, this is being said. Let's have a conversation about it. And then you don't have to feel like you're the expert, right? You can then generate kind of a comment section. And then sometimes in that instance, people are going to post references to other material out there. I think like if I'm going to be a discerning person when I'm online and I'm really interested, somebody's content's kind of roped me in, the first thing I'm going to do is click on the comments section. Absolutely. Because lots of times people are taking care of this and they're like fake news, or people are like, no, this is wrong, or this is so cool, but have you guys read this? I'm almost always going to start there. Then I'm going to go look for other sources. So I'm going to do like an online search. I'm probably going to jump into Reddit. So I'm going to see a conversation that like a forum at that point where lots of people are talking about it. And then now this opens up a different conversation, but I actually probably would run it through some kind of like aggregator too, like a AI system, because it's going to pull everything that's out there. Now that has its own problems. We know about trustworthiness with AI. That's probably a podcast into itself, because in the absence of information, it will create information. So lots of people don't know that. So those are called hallucinations in AI. So if it can't find something, it'll generate something because it believes it has to generate something. So that's pretty terrifying. Yeah, that's pretty crazy. But AI is all about prompts. So when you want to have an answer, people are like, plan my vacation. That's great. It'll do that. But maybe the most like a deeper thing is to say something like, plan my vacation to Italy and I want to eat at these restaurants and I want to do this and I want to do this, and cite all of the resources and awards that these places, see what I mean? Like it's a whole different level of prompting those things. And people don't realize when you're in AI, you can say, cite all of your references and it will do it. But again, you should still probably go check it.
Yeah. I mean, you said a lot of amazing things there. I did not know that AI had to create content if it didn't have it. Had to create an answer if it didn't have it. That's crazy. But again, this is like a perfect example of just like another wave that's hitting, another feeling of like, one more thing I have to navigate and think about. And how do I manage, all of the ways that we can gather information. I also think, Darren, that you said something really interesting, which is, if you kind of admit that you don't know or open up the conversation. I personally love that. It does not get clicks, but I think that is an okay thing. And I think there's something to be said for sitting in our lane. And I do think that asking questions in a post does get clicks because people want to talk. So I think if you don't know and you open the space for conversation, that's a good way to get clicks that feels maybe a little more honest and genuine and creates community and conversation. As long as the conversation doesn't start to get angry, which can happen. But we can also, as somebody who's starting the post or starting the content, we can step in and be good leaders and good guides in that way.
Well, as we bring this podcast to a close, we all kind of have our own opinions on this. Any final thoughts, Kristin, Allison, I can chime into on this kind of topic?
I obsess about this topic. I think about it from the moment I wake up to the moment I go to bed. I am addicted to social media. I totally admit it. And it's so hard to live in this space where I love it and I hate it and I want it and I don't want it. And it's necessary for my business, but I cannot stand it. And at the same time, I see the coolest people do the coolest stuff. And so I think oftentimes when in my own head and in my own mental health navigation, when I stumble upon something that feels like it's so broad and there's no right answer, that often means that there's no right answer and it's okay. And I can decide and I can take my time with it. So that's the practice that I'm trying to have. And I think more than anything, if anybody takes anything away from this podcast, lean in and try to remain in your path and be in your good foot, but don't give up. Don't just throw in the towel and try not to respond with anger, because I think that's the easiest thing to do. And I think if we all do that, then we are kind of slipping down that slope that none of us really want to slide down. So,
yeah, I agree. There's so many pros and cons to all the different platforms. They each have their unique little pros and cons, but find one that you resonate with, find one you love. If you're creating content, do it from a genuine way. Do what you need to do to have it be successful, but always remain true to yourself. Don't lose yourself in trying to get the clicks. And also, as a participant, enjoy it, but also have that discerning eye. Have your logical brain with you as you're scrolling through, just as much as you have your I want to be entertained brain. Have them share equal footing so that you can remain, in a space where you can enjoy it, but it's not that you're going down a rabbit hole of things that will ultimately be dangerous for you and negative and may have, a real negative impact on your emotional being and sometimes physical being if you believe some of the things people put out there. So I love that you said your kids have a much more, sort of skeptical, discerning eye. And maybe those of us and, the generations that grew up without the internet need to adapt some of that and, and learn from the younger generations how we can enjoy the platforms without letting, going all in and believing everything we see.
And I would just add just trusted resources. I mean, just as an association, we need to have a ton of credibility. And so when we're working with Allison Denney, her name's on the line, my name's on the line, our association's name on the line. So we're making sure that we're all getting it right with each other. So we kind of have each other's backs, right? So I think a healthy dose of skepticism, but those trusted resources are going to go right to the top of the list. And then, compare those to everything else that's out there. I want to thank our guest today, Allison Denney. For more information about Allison, visit rebelmassage.com. And to find all of her great work with ABMP, visit abmp.com/massage-bodywork-magazine and abmp.com/learn. Thanks, Allison. Thanks, Kristin.
Don't forget to click, like, and subscribe. I'm just kidding. Thanks, guys. This was totally fun.
This was great. Thanks, Allison, for this great conversation and helping us try to tell fact from fiction out there on the socials. Precision Neuromuscular Therapy has been teaching high-quality seminars across the country for over 20 years. Founded by Doug Nelson, PNMT uses problem-solving skills and precise treatment options to get powerful results for your clients. PNMT seminars focus on honing your assessment and palpation skills to precisely target the source of your client's pain while understanding the why behind the what. Meet us in a hands-on seminar or online in the PNMT portal and let us join you on your learning journey. Learn more at pnmt.org.